All right. Hey, Andrea, Gail, how are you?
Hi.
Hello. Ellen, did you make Tonneli a co-host so she could share her screen? Because remember last time when you were recording
Right.
and Kayanda,
Do that.
can you do that or do you have to stop recording?
No, I can
and
do
then
that right. No,
You can do it. Okay, just because I know she may share some visuals. I'm thinking she might, right?
And I will also be able to send you guys the deck that I've created for this. So if you want to be able to send that out through any newsletter or anything, or make that
thank you.
Great. Okay,
Thank you.
perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So you are now the co-host.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll wait for a few others. I think John is here somewhere.
Is John working? I know he's done with his big project.
No, I'm here. I'm here. Never mention that to me again. Just deny any ever speaking about it or something like that.
He messaged me because he knows I handle the Instagram account for IFDA. And when I did my first little splash and stories for Tonneli's presentation tonight, I used the Sex and the City theme. he wrote to me. He goes, did you do this to taunt me, Ursula? And I really didn't. But then I said, okay, maybe I did. John, you're going to have to tell Tonneli the great task because you're not under any kind of disclosure. You have to tell her. She'll get the biggest kick out of what your project was for dear Carrie Bradshaw.
We had to send out 2,400 suede hat boxes with a nest of jasmine and 2 cattleyas shipped out across the U.S. overnight express with a 6-inch ribbon rose tied on top, and there was questions about whether the greenhouse would have enough orchids in bloom, like 10 days.
Ooh, let's see.
I don't care if you turn on every light and orchids blooming, because they kind of shafted me. They shafted me around Christmas time and sent all the orchids I had ordered to the Rose Bowl parade and left me with nothing. So
no. What is their excuse though? Because like they're grown right around the corner from the Rose Parade. So how could they not have enough? Like,
well, and this is the largest Cattleya grower in the US, is near me. But still, when you need 4,800 Cattleyas, don't tell me there might not be enough sun, because and then the whole firm kept threatening me with non-disclosures on all the addresses of all the celebrities we have. And at that stage, it was like, trust me, I do not care. If we are sending one to God himself, I will be like, whatever, works for me.
At that point, it's just names on a spreadsheet. It's names on a spreadsheet.
And there were like 6 that, supposedly had some problem with the address. Yeah, not my problem.
That sounds like a house manager problem. When you're at that level, that is the problem of a house
manager. It does. So glad it's done.
I'll tell you. Hey, Terry.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
All right.
Hi, Terry.
Just trying to, we'll wait about another 2 minutes and then we'll get started because everyone's.
I know sometimes we have late.
Hello, Lisa H. Are you Tabletop Alchemist?
Yes.
Oh, hey, well, welcome.
Hi.
This is our new member.
Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. All right, another few minutes and then we'll get started. How are you, Susie? That's a nice backdrop. What a gorgeous garden.
I finally figured out how to get one in. Now, I don't know what I'll do it when it comes time to change because I think I lost the instructions. I guess I have to watch the Zoom video again.
Right. Cool. All right, let's see. Another minute or two. Hey, Ayaka, are you on there?
Hey, Rose.
Hey, Rose. We're gonna just wait another minute till 7:35, then we're gonna get started.
Rose, I like the mask you did for the home and garden show.
Thank you. That was so much fun. You know, it was all corn, the corn silk, the corn husk, the corn fruit. Yeah, George loved it.
Yeah.
Hey, Ayaka, how are you? Good to see you. Hey, Amy. Janie,
Hi.
how was everybody? Good?
Yes.
All right.
Hi, Ellen.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Good, good. So what time is it there?
Oh, it's 9:30 a.m.
Oh, tomorrow morning.
Yeah, yeah. Good morning. So yeah, good morning.
Oh, my goodness.
By the way, I've done the shooting at the market,
Oh,
Floral
good.
market. Yeah, I've done that, and but I will edit the
Okay.
movie for you,
Yeah,
and yeah, I will let you know
Okay.
when I'm done.
great.
Yeah.
Ayaka did a movie of her local wholesaler.
Ooh.
So in Japan. So
Yeah, in Tokyo.
yeah, so that's gonna be fun to see.
Sounds like something to make everyone jealous of what you can get that we can't get. I know that's how I feel when I've gone in other countries to the wholesale market. I'm like, I want those.
Right, really. All right, well, let's get started and then we'll just let people in. So again, it's good if you turn off your video and your audio. So Tonneli has a stronger signal. And Ursula, you're on.
Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our March 2022 meeting. We're excited to welcome Tonneli Grutter from just north of Seattle. So she is amazing. So she's not only the marketing director at Florist Review, she's also a freelance writer. But beyond that, she is a co-owner of Salty Acres Flower Farm on Whidbey Island. So she is an American flower farmer. She is also the manager and growth outreach person for Growing Veterans, which I know is very near and dear to her heart. And she's also a floral designer. And she has an extremely unique lens on the floral world. So I met her in person before the world came to crumble in March of 2020 at, ironically, Trend Summit in Vancouver. And I was just taken by her poise. And I know she's a lot younger than me. And she is so amazing and so already accomplished in what she knows. And I was just so excited. I said, we need to start spicing up who comes here. And she has a lot of wonderful insight on what she can share about what is trending in the floral world for 2020. So without further ado, I hand it over to you, Tonneli. Thank you for joining us.
Hi there. Can everyone see me and hear me all right? Good, good. Yeah, so I'm super excited to talk about trend forecasting today. And something that I'm going to do that's maybe a little bit different is I'm going to show you the American Floral Trends forecast for 2022. But B, I'm going to show you guys how to adapt this to your own lives and how to set your own trends, how to take a better pulse point on the design world at a whole. So it's not just, this is what we say is cool and do or die, but rather this is how you can adapt it. And this is how you can decide if this matters to your customer base and which trends you should be hopping on and which ones maybe you should be sitting out. So I am going to hop on with this and share my screen. Let me see if I can find the option to share screen. Video, record. Oh, here we are. Okay, is it currently on screen share? Oh, found it.
You are pinned.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes. Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, let me put this on presentation mode. So this tool I'm using right here, if you're not familiar with it already, is called Canva. It's another thing that I could give a whole class on recommending to people that they use. So what we're going to be talking about today is the American Floral Trends forecast. I had the pleasure of authoring this year's forecast, and it's been really telling to see how much we've already seen come to light. When we wrote this, it was mostly November and December of 2021. And we are now, well into, or of 20, yeah, 2021, we are now well into 2022. I think we all get lost on our years since the pandemic, right? So a big thing to ask yourself is, what's your overall pulse point of how the market is going? Does it seem like people are really happy with where they're at? Or does it feel like people are, feeling reminiscent of what used to be? Or does it feel like people are ready for change? And I think what we really came to understand about this year is that people want something fresh, even in home design markets. We're seeing things that had been total standbys, shiplap and white subway tile, are suddenly starting to feel old to people, which is really interesting because they had just stayed very consistent for a long, long time. So it's important to ask yourself, where have we been? We're coming out of a place where boho reigned supreme for a very long time, where minimalism reigned supreme for a very long time. I think we all saw the mason jars kind of go away. So those are in our periphery. Thank goodness for now. We want to ask ourselves, who are the trendsetters that we're looking to? Who is popping up in your algorithms? Or more importantly, what kind of floral action are you seeing in the outside world? Are you seeing brands partnering with florists? Are you seeing, maybe you're watching YouTube and perhaps you've seen those Squarespace commercials? Squarespace seems to especially love florists. American Express seems to especially love florists. Who are they highlighting? Who are we seeing out and about on album covers? These are all things that we should start looking at. Also, how are current events affecting trends? We can look to this and we can think about things like the supply chain crisis. White roses became very hard to find. And I think we saw a big push for Lisianthus and white ranunculus as a result. We saw people going to other things and working around these challenges. Also, how are geopolitical events affecting things? You're going to see a trend that I'm going to present to you, which lends very well to the outpouring of support we've seen for the situation in Ukraine. We could have never in a million years known that this is where it would be going. However, it ended up absolutely playing into what we're seeing with that. And then last but not least is, are there new media platforms which are contributing to floral design and the design market as a whole? I think with this, TikTok is something especially important to look at. In previous years, I've told floral designers, don't pay attention to TikTok yet. It's not time yet. I think this is the year when I'm saying it's time. So we're going to hop right in. When addressing how to gauge floral trends, or any trend setting for that matter, it's really important to think about seasonality. A lot of times when you look at floral trend forecasts, it just says these are 5 looks that we think are going to do great this year. And it doesn't take into account the fact of, okay, well, consumers want something very different in the winter than they do in the spring. You're not going to wear your puffy coat in the summer. So that's what we really wanted to think about. With winter, what we were really seeing a move towards is a feeling of bold elegance, statement making, really just demanding focus. In spring, we're expecting to see a lot of maximalism coming back, which I think I'm already seeing notes of, and some nods to retro culture, which had maybe been out of style in the last couple of years, that is kind of being fun to be a little bit retro again, fun to be a little bit cluttery again, and just celebrate that. Summertime, I think, always speaks to youth culture as a whole. Summertime speaks to what's fresh and what's new and what's energizing. I do think we're also going to see, as the world opens back up, that there's going to be a big pull towards new art. So that's conceptual art, fine art, music, dance, all of that. As the arts are coming back into being an in-person experience, we're going to see huge influences of that. And then last but not least, I think autumn is a time that we really long for those last days of summer. And, we look forward to the winter memories that we also long for. So I think it's a time of longing, but I think it's also a time that, as we watch the leaves fall, that sustainability tends to be most on our minds. So I made sure to include some looks that really focus on sustainable floristry as well. While I am a sustainable florist and very much fly the flag of those who use just what is local and what we can grow ourselves, these looks are not necessarily reflective of that. Now, in order for us to get an idea for what should be in this trend report, we took the step of surveying a group of hand-selected designers and industry leaders. And what we asked them was what their opinions were on certain trends. The example that I have here is minimalism. We asked them, is this something you feel is gaining, sustaining, or waning? And we did this for many different things. We asked about certain colors. We asked about dried goods versus fresh goods, painted goods. We asked them about certain combinations. We asked them about vessels, really the entire gamut of anything that you could want to know about, even types of flowers. Do you think that roses are gaining, waning, sustaining? We asked. And from that, we were able to find some interesting information. The fact that I have here is that on average, most trends within our realm are what we call a micro trend. Earlier I referenced the white subway tiles, the shiplap. Those tend to be trends that run on more of a 10-year cycle. Our trends tend to run on more of a 3 to 5 year cycle. And then old trends that have gone out will refresh every 20 to 30 years. So that's why we're seeing a really big push right now towards things in the 90s, which is so interesting, even with that return to dried florals that we saw kind of peak in the last couple of years and is now kind of just maybe just beginning to taper off or to evolve. That is something that we're noticing. Now, here is one of my examples. So for aesthetic trends, this is what the results showed us. So you can see here with our minimalism, that appears to be gaining in the minds of our trendsetters. And then a certain percentage say that it is sustaining and a certain percentage say it is waning. As a trend forecaster, we take it to the next level and we say, if the general public feels it is gaining, that means that in all reality, it is actually at the sustaining period. We can agree that boho for most regions is on its way out. I do think it's important for people to really recognize that these trends also evolve. What was the very first boho wave, the Rachel Zoe look back about 10 years ago, feels very dated now, and it becomes updated again and again and again to something new. But what people see that as in their mind is maybe a little bit older. We take something like cottagecore, which for those who may not be familiar with that is a newer style that kind of speaks to a Beatrice Potter sort of lifestyle, living in the cottage, English gardens, maybe wearing a lovely linen dress and making your own butter while raising your own chickens, very romanticized. I think that we can all agree here that traditionalism is something that will always have its place. Something people also felt is on its way up is dark beauty. And then interestingly, one that I think I did kind of disagree with here is the gilded luxury. So you can think of that as sort of your Bridgerton, your Marie Antoinette moments. I think we are still going to see a little bit of a rise on that. Now, the image that I have pulled here is an example from Texture Florals out of Philadelphia, I believe. And I think something really interesting about this image in particular is when we talk about that 30-year cycle of things that are cool or uncool, this really takes so many of those things down to the colors. We've got what could be a very gaudy red orange to some eyes coming back in a really big way. Minty bright teals. When I think of that, that is very, late 80s, early 90s coming back. We've got even flowers themselves that perhaps have been seen as a little bit uncool with the gerberas and the red roses. The plain red roses were really, not celebrated as much in the last couple of years. Suddenly coming back, and this image feels very fresh and very radical, even down to nods with the disco balls. That's pulling back even further to say the 70s and 80s as well. It's fun to see how these things cycle back around. Another example of this, I didn't my other photo here. Well, another example of this would be asking about what flowers are going to be in fashion. Something that we've really seen a resurgence in interest in is heirloom chrysanthemums. Now, this one is really interesting, and I love that we have someone here participating from Japan, because here in the US, chrysanthemums in particular really went through a stigmatized period after the 1970s where people saw them as a common filler-only flower. Large chrysanthemums were really frowned upon after that because they were overused. And now people are longing for that, but our wholesale grower base has not yet had time to catch up. For me, I also work in the field of marketing. So if we have any flower farmers tuning in with us, I look at these as opportunities as well. So we know heirloom chrysanthemum, people really want it. We know it is not available. It's a great time to start cloning those if you are a grower. We also can see here that things like daisies are supposedly not cool. You can look at this and you can say to yourself, this is a chance to reinvent it. So if you're trying to be a trendsetter, looking at things that are marked as extremely not cool is things that are on the brink of becoming cool again. So that's your sunflowers and your daisies. As we talked about trend setting and evolving trends, when we close our eyes and we think of 90s grunge, which is what so much of the dominant force in fashion and other trends are right now, those are two of the biggest motifs, were daisy prints and sunflower prints. So it's safe to say that if you are a designer who wants to push something and do something radical, I'd recommend that you try doing it with the daisy and you try doing it with the sunflower. Make it cool again, because the market is going to be hungry for that. Next, I'm going to be breaking into the actual trends that we have identified, and these do cycle through the seasons. So as I spoke about winter, this is a style that we really associated heavily with New Year's, with the beginning of the year, with Lunar New Year, and that is utopian is what we decided to call it. The utopian style is really leaning heavily into monochromatics. It's a very luxe style. It's all about having flowers that make a bold statement and really command your attention. In the wintertime, we're often indoors, and we have these opportunities to stop and really appreciate flowers as fine art. For the most part, they're out of season where we live. So they are a luxury item. And this is the time that you can really embrace that super luxurious feeling. We had the chance to feature some of Ursula's designs on here. So thank you, Ursula. I don't think I have any featured on this slide, but if you look at the Floral Trends report, you will see some of her designs featured in this look. And it also speaks to, you know, fashion to home design. A lot of times, if you are going for a very high-end look, you will see a high predominance of monochromatic design. And it leans into a really futuristic feeling that can be very fun, and you can reinvent it however you would like. The next look that we had that we were really excited about was Fable. So Fable was a really great look, speaking in some ways to that New Regency feeling, the Gilded Age, and also cottagecore. It's a lot of dark lit still lifes. We have this lovely one over here from, I believe this is from Betty Shinbon, who is Stems and Forks. She's mostly a food stylist, but also quite a gifted floral designer, though I don't think she identifies as such. You can see this was an ad that she actually did for Pink Lady Apples, I believe. And she has the smoke bush here, as well as these soft pink roses opened up with beautiful linens. I think that we're also going to see a return with this style to, this is sort of how the foraged look is evolving. So foraged look is becoming a little bit tighter, a little bit less spread out, and firework formation going on there. We're going to see more form returning to that. So for those who love the foraged look, I think this is where you're going to see it going. And then some of the colors that we have highlighted for this trend, you can really see right here with this. I believe this image of the farm here with the poppy fields is Wild Folk Studio. So that's a great opportunity there. And moving on, this is the look I would say I've most seen pop out as the winner far and above in this year. So when we talk about the effect that current political movements and even supply chain have had on floral design, Limerick is one that we are especially seeing hop out. We had already identified it as something that was going to be really big with sort of clashing colors, where we've got yellows and blues happening together, or we've got oranges and teals happening together. But we're definitely seeing the yellows and blues popping out all over the floral industry right now, and people are really embracing it. This is by and large as a response of love and outpouring of support for the people of Ukraine. However, I think that we are going to see it seep far beyond that and make waves far beyond it, because as floral designers continue to express themselves in this language, it is going to create very inspirational images, which consumers will then see out of context and bring back to you and say, suddenly I am dreaming of a baby blue and yellow wedding. This is very much something that we are already seeing come into play. It's going to be big for bridal shower flowers as well as baby shower flowers. And I think we're going to see it in some commercial spaces as well. Next up is a look that we call meta parody. And this really speaks to kind of new floral design. I still haven't even really decided what to call this look myself. It's not quite tropical. It's not quite tropical nouveau. It's something that we're seeing really come heavily out of places like Brooklyn to the north and Los Angeles, very, very dominant on the West Coast. It often mixes hyper-seasonal flowers, as you can see here. This is from Manuel Torres, who goes by Unum, I believe, on Instagram. And he's got some wilting dogwood blossoms, perhaps, with dried bleached foliage, tinted foliage in the background. This might even be daffodil greenery that has been painted blue. It's really about kind of making do with what you have, but also making very loud statements. And this is going to be very much a summertime feeling. This is what we're expecting to see lean into those who want to be increasing their presence in spaces like floral styling and retail floral styling, as well as musical floral styling. These are places that we're going to see this. I think it's going to be huge in hospitality flowers. So this is a look that I really recommend leaning into with that. Some of the people who really came up with this look and have pushed it so hard is, of course, Flower Pistil and Hassa Flowers has been a huge driver with their iridescent Anthurium. Anthurium in general, I think, have just had such a moment, and I don't think that trend is going anywhere. I think Anthurium are playing the role today that we saw Pampas grass playing maybe 2 years ago. And then over to this side, we've also got this image from Sophie Parker of Wife NYC, who does these lovely hand-painted surrealistic foliages as well as Anthurium. So really, really great opportunities to look at. I think we can see a lot of influence from pop culture in this look as well. So down here, we have a reference photo of a visual artist named Andrew Salgado, who has really been burning up the art world, and a musical artist named Ravina Aurora, who makes some really lovely, dreamy R&B music. So this is very much when we talk about Gen Z and those looking to chase what Gen Z is about. This is what we're looking at as a really big trend. I think that also that fable look plays into Gen Z quite well. And then now as we move into the fall, you can see that this is Memoir. So Memoir is sort of our updated wedding look. I think it's impossible to talk about wedding flowers without taking into consideration that wedding trends are much more static than your average trends. And I do think we're going to see more color come in. I think our days of endless cafe au lait dahlias are thankfully coming to a wane. And I think that hopefully we're going to see a little bit less eucalyptus only going on in terms of requests, less of that white blush mint monotony, I think, is going to be going away. And I think what we're going to see is a slow push into these warmer colors where maybe there's more oxblood tones as well as more salmon tones, rusty tones. We're going to continue to see, the mustard and honey Dijon roses be very popular. I think Westminster rose is going to continue to be very popular. Distant drums, many of those catch names that we've all come to hear a lot of in the last couple of years. I think when we talk about trend forecasting in the wedding market, we're going to continue to see flower names as celebrity names for a while. I think that genie is out of the bottle and consumers have become quite wise now. I think that we're going to continue seeing them asking for certain flowers by name. And this is definitely a look that we're going to see that pull in. This is also a little bit of an updated boho look. So it can play into both foraged and boho designs. It gives you an opportunity to kind of think about how you want to pull in with those dried assets you may have. It can also play in really well to faux and permanent flowers. And then the last image here, I apologize for the ones that have not loaded, but the last image here that we have is for haiku. And when we talk about haiku, I really see this as kind of your last moments before the holidays, when you're longing for that summer vacation again, you're longing for that somewhere warm, the world is getting colder and darker around you, and you're thinking to yourself, I want to be anywhere but here. Vases that we're going to see come into play for this are definitely more organic forms, more matte blacks. Terracottas are going to be coming back around. So, you know, when we talk about that 30-year cycle, you know, terracotta was very, very popular in the 90s, and we're going to see it coming back around with this trend. We're going to see a dominance of grouping. So this is, again, really fantastic for those who are looking to do hospitality flowers, things like this. This is your chance where you're going to see, you know, a beautiful simplistic vase of, say, bird of paradise next to ginger, next to palm fronds, and grouped together. Very similar to a haiku, where you're going to see things balanced and playing off of each other well. This look in particular speaks to a longing for travel, a longing for relaxation, but isn't specific to any one place, which is kind of exciting. You know, when executed properly, you can close your eyes and you can picture Mexico City just as well as you could picture, you know, maybe going to Japan or the south of France. It really just speaks to that vibe of wanting to be anywhere but here, sitting in that awesome hotel robe. So yeah, these are kind of the big things that we're seeing. I would love to open up this to questions for you guys, just to see if there's any questions the group may have. I always try to avoid death by Zoom, and I love to address whatever you guys would like to know. If anybody has specific questions or examples of trends that they would like to know, I love to be a resource for that as well. If anybody would like to reference this report later, you can absolutely see it at floristreview.com. It's still available there. Or you can also see examples of it on the Florist Review Instagram. Under our guide section, you can see a lot of examples of some of the visual references that we are going to be using. Yeah, I see that Amy here has a question. You can hop on, Amy, if you want to unmute yourself and hop on.
Everyone can unmute at this point, and then we can ask questions.
Hi. Such an amazing presentation. I just learned so much. That was incredible. I'm like, my mind is just buzzing. Okay, I have a question about, this has sort of been mulling for quite a while around painted material.
Yes.
So I think I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this huge trend around sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hear and what I see is, you know, there's kind of this butting heads, if you will, because from a sustainable standpoint, and you probably are well aware of this, there's, you know, a lot of push towards not painting material, not using even dyed materials.
Mm-hmm.
And I, having just watched your amazing presentation and admiring all these florists, see so many chemically treated flowers. So I don't particularly have a problem painting flowers. I sort of maybe stand a little bit more in the middle point of that space. I still use dyed flowers. I try to avoid painting them when I can, but if a client wants pink baby's breath, which is, you know, a common wedding request, or manipulated flowers, where do you think these trends are sort of heading and colliding, and what's sort of the juxtaposition of that, if you will?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. I always think it's interesting because for me, for those who have hopped in maybe midway through the meeting, I am a field grower. I grow only organic, and I use only flowers that I can source organically myself. That being said, I love viewing painted flowers and people being naughty from a distance. So all you naughty people out there, you keep being creative. And I'm just going to sit here wagging my finger because it's beautiful. It is beautiful. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think that we all have to ask ourselves, what is our own calling in art? Just the same as we would if, say, we were fiber artists or something like that. Do we agree with, you know, with man-made materials? The same could even be said for painting behind us. And I think what it really talks to is the crux that we're at currently between art and fine floristry. That, you know, fine art and flowers used to be in two different places. And then we saw, you know, floral events happening at art museums. And then we saw floral art really happening at the same time. And I think that the trends are going to continue evolving on this. I think it is important when we talk about it that we educate our customers and we educate those who we are sharing with. You know, I love when I see it more on longer lasting flowers. like sustainably dried that have maybe been color enhanced, that those of us who are florists, we know we can reuse again if we're being mindful. Or tropical flowers, perhaps, where, that already has a little bit bigger footprint, but it lasts longer. So maybe you can make it last a little bit longer in that way as well, if you're going to make the choice to color enhance. Even in terms of dyes, I think the industry is always changing and always evolving. These manufacturers know that we as florists deeply care about nature and that we want to protect it. So I think it's important that as we go to our wholesalers, we keep looking at new products. Don't settle for what you've always used just because what it's always been. Look and ask yourself what's new, what's out there, follow what's happening at the trade shows, and don't be afraid to try those new products. Maybe don't order a case right away if it doesn't work, but hop in and try them, because it's going to be the thing that really liberates us all in our creativity. Yeah, I hope that kind of answers.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Thanks.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a question. So who comes up with the names? They're so interesting, the names of the different seasons, the memoir and all that. Who does that?
Yeah. So that was me. I just kind of wanted things to have a cohesive feeling. And I mean, really, when we talk about flowers, it is a language. And how could we not look to the literary world when they already have this whole framework of what they're talking about? We know that we make poetry, and we know that we make jokes sometimes too. But the question is, does the outside world know that that's what we're doing as florists?
Right.
Sometimes.
So interesting. And then my other question is for who responded for your survey results, and what's the breakdown versus urban, rural, East Coast, West Coast? How balanced were the response?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of representation in florals, and a lot of people have noticed that in Florist Review since I started with the organization, that suddenly it's not just necessarily a club of the same people who've always been there. It's about opening it up. It's about making sure that we have young people, old people, rural, big cities, small farms, making sure that everybody has a voice in it. So we did reach out to industry professionals, so people who are at the manufacturing side, at the wholesale side, but also field growers, also people who are sustainable florists, people who are production florists, people who have multi-generational flower shops, just to make sure that, we represent our whole industry. For this, we did lean a little bit more heavily on event florists, because I do think that they tend to be the first ones to feel the shock and the wave of what is coming. I think, as we cycle through, I think that flower shops that rely heavily on, say, wire services and things like that are going to feel these trends probably last, but that doesn't mean that you can't push it forward however you want to. And we also need to recognize that, maybe what is happening in Long Beach, California is not appropriate in Duluth. And that's really, really important when we talk about trends and when I talk about flexibility of how you can adapt these trend setting models to yourselves, that you can understand how to look around and kind of ask yourself, what's cool where I live? Like, what's getting old where I live? And how can I kind of get ahead of that trend so I don't feel like an old hat, but I also don't feel like I'm being pushed into being inauthentic or driving my business somewhere that it really shouldn't be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I have a question. So when you're looking back at trends, I mean, how far back do you go? Because obviously there are really interesting trends even from the 50s and 40s. Further back, is that ever part of your research?
Absolutely. And it was so fun that when this came out, happened to be our 125-year anniversary, because we were going through our archives and looking at things. I myself am a big collector of vintage flower memorabilia. So I love vintage postcards of the Rose Parade in Pasadena. I love vintage flower frogs and really, really god-awful figure bases. I just can't get enough of them. So I think it's a lot of fun to look back and ask ourselves, and something that we are seeing, for instance, with that utopia look with the monochromatics, I think in a lot of ways that look is actually a throwback to forms that we saw very popular, stiffer forms, more sprayed stiff forms from the 1950s. When you look at it with kind of a squint, you're like, that's not that different than great grandma's wedding flowers. Like, really, at the end of the day, it's not that different. It's just been refreshed and recycled. And also the flowers that were really in vogue back then. You know, we're seeing the return of reflexed roses. We're kind of trickling in, and now it is very much here. And part of that was a reaction to supply chain. There was less roses to go around. So how do we make the roses that we get be better? Make them bigger. And how can you make them bigger? Okay, keep that stem a little longer and push her out into the foreground and reflex those petals. And we're just going to blow in there and we're going to do everything we can to really make her shine. We've seen so much of that. The return of carnations, you know, the return of heirloom chrysanthemums. These are all flowers that people looked at, you know, had you asked 5 years ago, and people like, ugh, no, I don't do that. Even baby's breath. That was such a cringe flower for so long. Now we see these people coming in and they're doing entire installations of baby's breath only, and people are going wild for it. So it's just really all about asking yourself, you know, what's been a while. So when I spoke to, you know, sunflowers, again, the situation in Ukraine, I think, is pushing that to the forefront. Daisies, people craving peace, pushing that to the forefront. When I took this trend report in November, people said sunflowers, daisies, very not cool, very, very not cool. Nobody wants these. We're already seeing that recycle. So just looking back at your old photos even and asking yourself, what was cool? And you're going to see these things coming back, very much so.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Some historical knowledge really is a good thing for all of
Oh,
us.
absolutely.
I should say too.
And it's such a fun thing to like revisit that heritage too, and look back and pay homage to beautiful moments in history. I mean, there's nothing more fun than having an Easter egg and something and being like, oh, well, those gardenias really had a little bit of something special. That was a nod to something that just the rest of the room didn't see, but I knew. It's very rewarding as a creative.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions, anybody?
I was going to say, Tonneli, with talking about the history and the trends coming back and forth, what popped into my mind immediately was, and I want to ask you what you think of it, I thought about fashion, because I always feel like, you know, Paris Fashion Week is wrapping up. Like what you're seeing, I feel like floristry might be having, it always has a moment, you're in a group of people who are flower lovers, but I'm saying, I wonder if like beyond, I think who did that big, huge flower wall? I know it wasn't sustainable. What was it? How many, 10, 15 years ago? Who was it? Chanel or Dior? They did those. I'm sure it was placarded in foam, but remember, it was Dior. Yes, Amy's laugh. I know now, cringe. I mean, it's like, but you know, Amy's a trendsetter, because even for me, like when I got out of floral school, I used a lot of fun. I was like, okay, this is what I did. But now it's like, I don't almost never use it. To me, that is like a big aha moment. You know, to me, I feel like there's a time and a place, but it's like, to me, the time is much like almost non-existent anymore. But it's like, that's because people bring it up saying, what else can you do? So to go back to the flower and fashion, what do you see? Because in my mind, was just screaming out of my head is all the stuff I saw. And I don't know if anyone's seen it, please go on, look at Maison Valentino. They did this whole beautiful pink, and it's gorgeous. It's like this bubblegum pink, and you're like, what? But it's mesmerizing, the monochromatic, to see that. It's like, so anyway, I'm going to pick your brain and see what you think about. And the Schiaparelli, all the spiky gold jewel. I mean, phenomenal. I was getting total Madonna vibes of her pointy, you know, bustier back in the, you see, but it's like to see it come around. But I said, how is that fashion going to translate into flowers? Because some people,
we see that in a very literal way when you look at the set design that flower shows use, or that fashion, I just call it a flower show, that fashion shows use. They often look like flower shows. We see this coming into play really heavily. I think we're seeing it more and more in the advertising space. I think that's going to continue to increase. That when we look at beauty brands that have done really well, like Glossier, that are really youth driven, they have moss all of a sudden everywhere and mushrooms being used as florals. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well now that's the thing in flowers. And we see these things blow up as a result. I mean, I don't know about anybody else here if you were Team Kimye, but I think every florist on earth should have been at least a little bit Team Kimye, because what they did for the marketing of flowers was insanity. The fact that that man, I think, spends about a wholesaler's worth on just any show of affection, I'm like, okay, can all celebrities please do this? Because we would be fine with it. Thank you. I think that those are big industry drivers, is not just the fashion houses themselves and the fashion sets, but the people who are sitting in that front row. I think that if you're looking at flowers from a fashion week standpoint, I recommend taking those favorite brands, the show that maybe stands out to you, and following the celebrities who are in that front row and seeing, often they won't post it to their main grids per se on Instagram, but in their stories, you will see people send them flowers and you'll see them give shout outs to florists, and you will see the things that are influencing them. You will see what they give each other for birthdays and special occasions. And that's a great way to see what is on the edge of floristry, of what people are wanting. So that's something that's kind of fun. Another place that you can see it, and this is certain designers more than others, Dolce & Gabbana traditionally has been a great place to see it. I think Givenchy has been traditionally a great place to see it, where florals on the body of models tends to be more popular, where you're going to see it more in motifs and prints and things like that. So that also does come into play. I think that right now we're seeing less flowers on the body per se, but that might mean that it's ripe for a comeback already, because I think that is a very quick turnaround trend. We saw where it was the Niecy Nash style rose behind the ear for a long time, and that was like, ugh. And then it became the flower crown, and then people were like, So it's like, what is next? That is hard to say, but I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah, it's funny. That great Oscar de la Renta print. And that was just last fall.
Yeah.
Who was wearing that? Taylor Swift.
The Taylor Swift dress, absolutely.
That was incredible. Yeah. Incredible. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe it'll be a palette cleanser where people will be wearing monochromatic plain for a few months, and then flowers. Always in the summer and spring anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Tonneli, do you have any ideas on bouquet trends or thoughts on bouquet trends?
Yeah, I think that we're gonna continue to see wraps and custom wrapping making a bigger presence in the US. When I look at bouquet trends, I don't think that the US is the biggest driver of bouquet trends. I think that places like South Korea and Australia are the biggest drivers of bouquet trends to me. I love European style bouquets, which are wildly conceptual. However, I don't think the US is ready for that, and I'm not sure the US ever will be. As a whole, I think it's something for us to appreciate. Like, how the musicians are like, that is jazz for jazz. Like, I think that is European bouquets. But I do think that, the beautiful wild bouquets that we see out of, say, Eastern Europe, which have sprays of orchids and beautiful backing contrasted custom wraps, I think that those are all opportunities we're going to see here in the US. In terms of bridal bouquets, I think that we're in a really transitional point with that. And it's interesting. I think that we're going to see a movement towards color, for sure. I think we're going to see a movement towards polychromatic, for sure. I think that form and size is more wide open than it's ever been in the past. In the past, as florists, we know that we've had our roundy moundy years, we've had our wild and out there years, we've had our cascade years. I think right now what we're seeing is a great willingness for brides to customize their shape and size to themselves in their dresses, as well as ribbon usage. I think that we're seeing where no one's necessarily just shying away from ribbon. We're seeing some brides want to be rock and roll with huge amounts of tulle, and other ones want to have it tight bound. And that's completely fine, because for us as floral professionals, it gives us a chance to not copy paste over and over again, which I think is just a breath of fresh air for all of us. We don't want to do the same thing over and over. So, yeah.
Great thoughts. I loved this.
Yeah,
So inspiring.
Yeah. Oh,
all right. I have another question for you, Tonneli. So coming, fingers crossed, prayers up, coming out of, the 2 years that we've had, and a lot of people delaying, postponing, eloping, intimate weddings, intimate gatherings, home parties, this, that, what do you think is gonna, and I know what they're predicting now, 2.5 million weddings potentially for 2022. So do you think it's gonna be, how are the flowers gonna demonstrate? Are we gonna have big flowers for small events? Do you think people are gonna go back to these big bonanza weddings of 500 people show the opulence of that? Or are people gonna kind of like what you said, is this gonna be now our kind of maybe palette cleanser globally of a lot of things, of what matters? What do you think it's gonna boil down to?
I think the cards are still kind of on the table. I do think that people are realizing that the world didn't end when they went out and they got married and they did what they wanted. And those people are sharing with their friends who are currently engaged. I do think we're going to see a huge return to sympathy work. I think that backlog is very real, that people who lost out on those opportunities to grieve deeply need it. And it's very important to them that they show those outpourings of love. So we will see that. But in terms of weddings, I think that we're going to see some people doing very bespoke, high-end elopements so that we can have a lot of fun with. And I love those. I think that we're going to see travel floristry becoming a thing again, very much for our freelancers out there. I think a factor also, though, is going to be inflation. It's going to be supply chain. It's going to be what's happening with gas and everything else, that if people start to feel the pinch, especially when we talk about weddings, which would be higher ticket, oftentimes those are weddings where maybe the bride and groom are not the ones paying for it. And who is paying for it? Perhaps a retired parent who is now looking at the wealth they had amassed being worth less due to inflation. So they may put the pinch and the pedal down a little bit harder on some of those budgets. That being said, I think the lessons that we've learned as florists through the pandemic with making do with less, I think florals as a whole will be bigger. So I do think they will be bigger, but I don't think that weddings will necessarily be bigger. I think that's going to be kind of an influx. I think that some people will choose small, some people will choose big. I think people just in general feel more liberated to do what feels authentic to them now. We've all had this chance to look in the mirror and say what's actually important to me. And we've had a chance to say no unapologetically and to say yes unapologetically. So we're going to see customers that are more attuned to what they actually want and what's really important to them. I think that also the ball is in our court as florists right now, that there's such a backlog and there is such a desire for beautiful flowers that I think we can really assert ourselves as what we need to succeed, that we can really put it out there. These are realistic timelines. These are realistic prices. This is how many people I need on my team. And this is how much time I need for cleanup and setup and all of these other factors. I think those are all going to be things that are going to make our lives a little easier. The ears are going to be ready to hear those hard conversations for once, which is really nice. Yeah.
I want to alert everybody to Gail's comments that she says Hillwood has heirloom chrysanthemums continuing from Marjorie Post time that are being cultivated there. And I also want to put in a plug. They have a really amazing porcelain show right now. And there's a showstopper on the dining room table. I'll post a picture on our Instagram and Facebook of this 3-dimensional dinner party on the dining room table of porcelain figures. It's just, you got to just see this. It's unbelievable.
Very cool.
And also I have to say, remember 5 years ago, for those of you who were with us 5 years ago, Dottie Harrigan did a workshop and we had chrysanthemums from Delaflor, a grower or a breeder, I can't remember who they are, in Holland, I believe. And those chrysanthemums were unbelievable. Some of them look like dahlias. They just look like everything. Incredible colors. So they were thinking, those people, even 5 years ago or more.
And to the American eye, that feels like an entirely new flower, like a flower that was just invented yesterday. I know that we started growing heirloom chrysanthemums at my farm. And when I bring them to farmers market, people have asked me just about every flower on planet Earth, with the exception of that. Same with asters. Heirloom asters are another one where people look and they're like, but what is it? Is it a dahlia? No. Well, it must be a dahlia. It's not a dahlia. I'm sorry. Well, is it a Cosmo? No, it's not. And it's so mind numbing to them. They're just like, but how can it be? And they love it. They love that things are scented too, having things that come back that are scented. Those extra large marigolds, African marigolds, I think are really having a moment. They're resilient and they're fun. So many great opportunities to just celebrate flowers right now that we haven't had a chance to celebrate for a little while.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? This has really been great. You have brought so much depth to this presentation of just everything, politics and the world and climate. And
it's all tied together. Yeah. And I will upload, like I said, I'll send off that presentation and that will have some of the visual aids that were missing throughout it. I don't know why they didn't display as we went, but yeah, those will be there for you.
Well, fantastic. Fantastic.
It was amazing, Tonneli, and blew my mind off. It was amazing. I loved it. And also giving us a lot of things to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you haven't had a chance to look at the trend report yourselves yet, it's completely free to view online. If you just go on to floristreview.com and you can type in American Floral Trends forecast, it will pop up on there. You can even print it off, post it to your bulletin board, and just look at that the next time that you're feeling like maybe you need a little push. You got something extra in the cooler you want to play with, go ahead and try it. See what you do. I think my biggest challenge to everybody is work with colors that feel icky. Like if there was one thing I take away from this year, the thing that I see has the highest virality to it is colors that you say like, okay, I'm going to do this. I can do purple and blue. I can do this. I can do this. Like colors that feel uncomfortable together. Like you can do them, you know, your oranges and lavenders, like just go for it. Go buck wild. It's going to feel so icky, but just embrace the suck. And when you're done, trust me, it's going to be
Well, we're going to have a challenge based on your presentation, and that is a great starting point. So everybody start
Yes.
thinking. We'll announce it in the next day or two. So that would be great. What can you do?
Yeah, and if you're
with
proud
orange
of your
and
work,
purple?
go ahead and tag at Florist Review. We love resharing things. We always tell everybody that, you know, if there's something you have that you're proud of, send it to us. We're real people. And by real people, I mean, it's usually me, so hi. And yeah, it's great to just lift up other florists. That's really what we're here for.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Really terrific program.
This was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tonneli.
Yeah. Everyone have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
I'm on here. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
fantastic.
Tonneli's there. It was awesome. Hi, Chloe. It's like my daughter is dancing in front of me.
There you go.
Tonneli, you still on? Well, Ellen, I'm going to send you her Venmo stuff and
Yeah,
everything.
I was still on.
Yes, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
that's
you
all right.
said-
No, you
no,
can
thank
stay on.
you.
That was really one of the best presentations
Oh,
we have
thanks.
had
Yeah.
since we started this.
Since we started, seriously, it was
Really?
amazing. You were on point. You knew your stuff. It's like, boom. Amazing, amazing.
I just love a little historical reference for people because I think a lot of people operate in the moment, and that's okay too. But the history of floristry, you know, obviously is as old as mankind.
Oh,
And to
absolutely.
really sort of think about things, and I'm a big trend follower. I'm a lot older than you guys, so I've been around a lot longer, and I've seen a lot of, especially fashion. And it is really interesting to pick up on those cues. There's a whole world out there in every single thing that's done. And it's really, I think you really were great in talking about that. So thank you.
Yeah, you know, it's all about just seeing if it resonates with you, it's probably going to resonate with somebody else. If you're hungry for something, there's probably someone else who's hungry for it out there.
Right.
I think we sometimes get, you know, stuck in this feeling that we can't do it unless somebody else already proved it's cool again.
Right.
But, you know, every now and then it's something completely new and fresh. I think what we see with people like Sophie Parker at Wife NYC, when I saw that for the first time, like, now that is something I've never seen before.
Right.
The first time I saw her
Right.
paint a Monstera leaf to look like a monster can. I was like, this is weird. And I'm loving it. Okay.
Yeah.
But then, you know, we see other things where it's completely just the same thing, but recycled, refreshed, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.